And we are live. Welcome back to today's national weather forecast. As you can see, there is a lot to talk about today. We've got a number of winter storm warnings in effect throughout Washington and Oregon. We've still got that Arctic blast of cold air bringing down 30 to 50 degree below average temperatures from Montana all the way up into New York. And then we also have some ice storms that are stretching all the way from Texas up through West Virginia and Virginia. And the big part of the story we're going to be talking about today is it looks like there's a number of successive systems. There's 4 systems total that we're going to be looking at today. Up front, I'll be honest, the first 2, I think there's a good confidence of happening. The second 2 are more just looking at for fun right now to see what could be in the forecast, but the forecast models themselves aren't entirely confident on those yet. But as you can see, we've got winter storm warnings, wind chill warnings, ice storm warnings, lots going on. So as always, if you're only interested in one of these stories, I put the timestamps in the comments below, so you'll just be able to click directly to the story that you're most interested in. Now, also, I should mention, as we've seen this week especially, forecast models change very fast. Like originally, West Virginia and Virginia were supposed to get 1.5 feet of snow with this ice storm here, and now they're going to be lucky to get 6 inches. So it's always important to check that this actually is my most recent forecast, because I do these every single morning, and especially with weather, it's always important to stay updated with the most recent information. So with all that being said, let's dive into this map here and take a national overview of what's going on. Again, we got the winter storm warnings, wind chill warnings, and ice storm warnings. So I think the best thing to do first is just take a look at the overall precipitation map. Where are these storms moving through? You can see one of them is already here. Out of the 4 ice storms we're going to be looking at, the first one is already here. So in confidence-wise, pretty confident this one's happening because it already is. And you can see that had some significant damages this morning. Ice piling up about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. I know there was a 75 car pileup in Texas, so my thoughts and prayers go out to everyone who has been affected by this ice storm. And you can see throughout the day today, that system is working its way into Virginia and North Carolina. Mostly snow and rain at this point because it's a little bit warmer as we get into the afternoon. And then that's going to move off the coast. So that's the first system there. But you can see while that was happening, we have another little system moving through the west starting at about this afternoon. We'll look at the exact timing of it because it does look like we have a pretty decent storm coming in. I don't think it's going to be nearly as big as that massive winter storm Orlena we had a couple weeks ago, but it's worth noting. But the other thing worth noting is that it moves through very fast. Like Orlena, for example, sat over us for 4 or 5 days. That comes through, and as soon as it's here, it's already gone. And that's important for the rest of the country because what happens to the west ends up happening to the east. That system you can see is going to reorganize, and that becomes ice storm number 2. It looks like that one's going to be staying a little bit closer to the coast, although parts of Tennessee and Kentucky could be getting some ice with that one as well. Looks like the majority of it, though, pushing right into Virginia there, and then the northeast actually picks up some light snow with that one as well. Then, while that ice storm is developing in the east, we have another system number 3, coming through on the west, dropping even more snow to the Cascades and the Sierras. That's why we have those winter storm warnings. Some areas there could be picking up 2 to 3 feet of snow over the next week. And then when ice storm number 2 goes through, and then this next one starts to form. Now, this is where we're into Sunday. So this is about the cutoff line to where I stop trusting the weather models. I typically have a rule of about 3 days I stop trusting the weather models. So this is more just out of curiosity for what could be in the forecast later, not saying these next 2 are for sure going to happen. It's likely that there's going to be some kind of storm going on somewhere in the country. The exact timing and the locations will surely change in the next week. It's not a matter of if they'll change, but how they'll change. But it's still fun to look at because weather is always interesting and seeing how these different storms develop. So this is number 3. And this one as of right now, it looks like it could actually be bigger than the first two. The reason for that, this one I'll show you in a minute here, it dips even farther down, picks up even more moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. Remember that Arctic blast of cold air, that's what's allowing these freezing temperatures to be throughout the eastern half of the country. And then that one moves through next Tuesday, Wednesday. So that's still a bit off in the forecast for me to say that it's going to happen. But if it does, that looks like it could be a big one because it's dipping down farther and picking up more of that moisture. And then once again, while that ice storm's affecting the eastern half of the country, we have yet another system moving through the west. So that's the theme of this forecast today. Numerous systems, very active weather pattern, lots to talk about. So that fourth system comes in, and then just like that third, it's going to dip all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico, pick up that moisture just like the third did, reorganize itself, bring in some of that cold Arctic air, and then that looks like it could be a major storm for the Midwest and then the Northeast. But that's getting all the way into this time next week. So that one is very, very unconfident weather models right there, but still worth noting because it fits the theme of the very active pattern that is very confident in the weather models right now. So I always like to just take a wide view of where we're going to be getting some precipitation. As always, ignore the northern states here. We'll look at the snowfall in a second. This is more just to get an idea of our rain. So you can see the southeast, places could be picking up 2 to 3 inches of rain, as well as the coast of California and Oregon, where we're going to dive in real local right here to see who's going to be getting that rain. Some locations possibly 3 inches. Now it is wintertime, so people love looking at the snowfall totals. That's the first thing I'll point out there. That was supposed to be 1.5 to 2 feet of snow, but something happened in the forecast that I'll show you in a second for why this storm lost a lot of its energy. And it actually looks like it's going to be happening to storm number 2 as well. Then you can see that snow already starting to build through in the west there. That spreads out into the Midwest and into the Northeast. And then there's when storm number 3 starts really digging in here, dropping down farther south, bringing snow all the way down into Texas. And it looks like 6 to 8 inches of snow, possibly even a foot into Oklahoma. And then that one moves up, and that one looks like it could drop some decent snow to the Northeast if it does in fact end up happening. So around this time next week, that's what's expected to fall. You can see possibly 2 to 3 feet in the Cascades. That's why we have those winter storm warnings. And then up here, that's where we have that extremely cold Arctic air, but not so much the moisture. Right along this strip right here is where we get the combination of the two. We have the cold air being pulled down, and then we have the moisture being pulled in. So it's this strip, which is where we pick up our greatest snowfall totals over the next week. And now I'll finally show you why that system over West Virginia and Virginia kind of weakened. It was supposed to get 1.5 feet of snow, and as you can see, technically the system is right over West Virginia and Virginia right now, and it doesn't even look like it is. That's a trough. That's what a storm system is supposed to look like. As you can see, it basically looks completely flat right there. And I can't go back in the weather model. This is the most recent one, but the same thing is happening to storm number 2 right here. You see it's a big trough, and then the bottom of it just falls off and goes into Mexico, and then by the time it gets up to the Midwest and Northeast and places like West Virginia and Virginia, it's basically flat. It's lost all its energy and strength to Mexico. Now with the second one, a similar thing is going to happen, but then a big difference. This will make more sense in a second. You see it looks like it breaks off, but then you're going to see all that get absorbed into that system, and that's why number 3 looks like it could be a big storm. I wanted to show that because it's a better visual for the lows breaking off of the overall trough. Here is a better way to see what's actually going on with the energy. So this is looking at vorticity. We're not going to go into a whole vorticity lesson here. Just think of it as storm energy. So you can see that trough right there has some decent storm energy. And actually that ice storm over the Midwest still has some energy right there as well. So watch as that energy breaks off into Mexico. That is the one, that's storm number 2, where we lose a lot of the energy. Now with number 3, take a look at that area of high positive vorticity. That means lots of storm energy. That's where it breaks off. It looks like it's going down into Mexico, but you'll see this little cloud of energy. Not really a cloud, but it helps to think of it that way. That's what's actually going to get reabsorbed into this storm number 3, and that's why that one looks like it could be the biggest of all 3. So I just thought that was a cool graphic. I'll just go back so we could look at it one more time. See that ball of energy right there breaks off just like the first two systems did, but then it gets reabsorbed, and that's what causes that storm number 3 to be a bit stronger. And then with this number 4, that one looks like it's going to dip really far down. So we'll have to look at that one as well, because that looks like it could be a major storm right there. Now, with that big dip I just showed, part of what that's doing is bringing down that cold air. We've been talking about the Arctic blast of cold air all week long, and it was supposed to be gone by this next Monday, but with that storm I just showed you, that trough digs all the way down, the effect that has is continuing to bring this cold air down. You can see the trough over the middle of the country right now, and it's a perfect example of what's going on here. Wind flows into the low pressure system, so you can see that's exactly what's bringing that cold air down from Canada. It's also mixing with this low pressure system up here, which with the counterclockwise winds, the bottom of it is also pushing the cold air and the wind in that exact same direction. And unfortunately, this was supposed to go away on Monday. There's where the cold Arctic blast was finally going to start weakening and going away. But with these successive low pressure systems that we have moving through the country back to back to back to back, it's going to continue to cause this same cold air to continue to be pulled down. You can see the next system right there continuing to pull that cold air down, getting into Saturday and Sunday, and then right when you think it might let up, the next trough moves through and pulls the cold air all the way down into Texas. So that matches that last map we were seeing where how far down that trough was digging. That's exactly what's going to be happening with the cold air as well. Now, an even better way to see that is the temperature anomaly map. This shows how far off of the average are your temperatures. You can see Montana right now, 40 to 50 degrees below average temperatures. But that cold air is stretching all the way down into Texas, although not as bad as Montana. We're just 25 degrees below average, which is certainly still significant. That'd be a story in and of itself. But watch as the number of systems keep pushing through across the US, you're going to see a number of pulses of this cold air over and over again as the low just continues to bring that cold air down from Canada. This is now getting into Friday. You can see those 30 to 40 degree below average temperatures start creeping back into the Midwest and all the way down into Texas as well. And then with that storm number 3, the one that looks like it's going to dig really far down and reabsorb some energy, that is going to bring those 45 to 50 degree below average temperatures all the way down into Texas. Midwest, you're still getting them at this point as well. And then, as you can see, it's not gone on Monday like the forecast models were originally showing. Looks like it's going to be sticking around for quite some time, as this is now getting into this time next week, and Texas is still feeling the cold, still 30 to 35 degrees below average. So that cold air looks like it's going to be here to stay. That's about as far off in the forecast as you can go, and the Midwest is still 30 degrees below average through February 20th. So you might be tired of me talking about the Arctic blast of cold air, but it looks like it's here to stay, so I might be talking about it for quite some time to come. If we want to actually look at the temperatures themselves, not just how far off you are from the average, you can get an idea for how cold this really is. We got negative 20 up here in Great Falls. Places throughout Minnesota are below zero as well. I know it's hard to see the exact numbers, so a good way to look at this is anything with a purple color. That means you're below zero. Anything with this blue color, that means you're below freezing, or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So what I'm really looking at is, one, how far these below freezing temperatures spread out, because it's basically over the entire eastern half of the country at some points, and then also how far these below zero temperatures spread out. So you're going to see this second blast of cold air that we were looking at earlier this week. We were talking about, let's see if the map wants to respond here. There we go. Starting to show as we get into this weekend. This is actually one area of the forecast model that's been pretty consistent. It was consistently forecasting this second blast of cold air where we get the below zero temperatures getting into Saturday and Sunday all the way down into Iowa. So take a look at that as that high moves in, and then the trough is digging all the way down here into Texas. And exactly what we were talking about. That's bringing that cold air down. Places in Texas, Lubbock, -1 degrees at this point. St. Paul, -15. Green Bay, -10. So that's getting into, that was your Valentine's Day forecast. So you might not want to make your Valentine's Day plans outside. And I'll just continue to click through as fast as I can here. See if the map even wants to respond. You can see that cold air is not going anywhere even as we get into the 18th and 19th. That cold air is just going to be staying right over the region. And I think I got to close that map. I have about 60 tabs open, so I think that's why the computer is going a little bit slow. So just taking a look at the warnings, with that cold Arctic blast of air, we have wind chill warnings in effect through Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, and then wind chill advisories stretching all the way up into New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. So this cold air is widespread. And the reason it's a wind chill warning is because we're mixing those -20 degree temperatures with a little bit of wind. So when that happens, it can actually feel like it's -50 degrees. With temperatures like that, you can get frostbite in about 10 minutes. So that's why those warnings are in effect over such a wide region right here. And we're likely going to see that spread out even farther as that cold Arctic blast of air extends throughout this weekend. Now, the other things you might be noticing on this map, the ice storm warnings down here. We're going to be talking a lot about all the different ice storms that are going to be affecting the eastern half of the country, but then also the winter storm warnings up here in Washington and Oregon. So since all these ice storms are first hitting the west as just snow and rainstorms, I think it helps to look at the west first, because what happens in the west eventually is the kind of weather we're going to be seeing in the east. So if we actually go up to the wide view and keep our eye on the west here, you can see right now we're somewhat in the clear, but then as we get into this afternoon, that's when that next system starts to push in. And it looks like we're going to get some heavy rain throughout the Bay Area and the California coast, some decent snow throughout the Sierras and the Cascades. What I was saying earlier, though, is that system seems to be a fast mover. It's not sitting over us for all that long. It's here and gone before you know it. But right behind it is system number 2. Or technically this is number 3, because the first one already moved through yesterday. So you can see that next one coming through this weekend. This is now getting into Saturday. That's when the next big one comes in. And this one actually has changed a little bit in the forecast models. Looks like it's going to be affecting a little bit farther north than yesterday was showing. More of that snow falling on Washington, less of it falling on California. And then right as that one moves off, there's another system right behind it on Monday. And then finally, there should be a fourth system here on Thursday. Just a light one for right now. So just taking a look at the overall pattern, because I always think this is the easiest way to see these storms coming in. We've got that little guy right there. Like I said, it's a winter storm. I don't think it's going to be anything like that big one we had a couple weeks ago, and it's not lasting too long. It's here and gone. And then the next one comes in as we get into Saturday, and then the third one looks like it's going to be the biggest right there. That's where we get an actual big trough building in through the region. So let's take a look at California first before we move up into Washington and Oregon. We've got that system moving in, like I said, this afternoon. So we'll have to look for that heavy rain throughout the North Bay and then that snow starting to build into the Sierras. That's going to continue into Friday morning, and parts of central to more southern California are going to pick up some decent snow in the lower parts of the Sierras there. That's some heavy snowfall rates, maybe 0.2 to 0.5 inches per hour. That one clears out, like I said, and then number 2 comes in. And this doesn't look as big as the forecast models were showing yesterday, but the Sierras will still be getting some snow. So if you're going skiing or snowboarding for Valentine's Day weekend, looks like there's going to be both snow from that system we're getting this afternoon and this other system that we're getting on Saturday. And then number 3 comes in after that. Looks like that one, again, mostly going to be hitting Washington and Oregon, but Sierras will be getting some snow. Widespread areas along the coast and in the inland valleys will be getting some light rain with that as well. So let's just take a local look to see the exact timing. First bit of rain should start coming in the next half an hour or so in the very northern parts of California. Then as we work into this afternoon, that's when this storm starts to pick up, get some heavy rain throughout the Bay Area, some 0.2 to 0.5 inches per hour of snow in the Sierras. Then that one's gone. The next one comes in 10 p.m. Friday. And then, like I said, that second system looks like it's more of a northerly storm. That's kind of the theme with these. It's affecting Washington and Oregon more than California, but we're still going to feel some effects. Starting, looks like 4 a.m. Saturday is when that storm really starts to pick up in very northern California. Drops even some more snow for the Sierras, and storm number 3 comes through. Widespread rain, widespread snow, although there's no period that looks like it's going to be all too intense on getting into Monday. So lots going on that we're going to have to keep our eye on in the weather forecast for California. Just taking a quick look at the total precip, you can almost see the 3 waves as I click through there. Let's do it again. So there's wave 1, 2, and 3. So Bay Area, you could be getting half an inch to an inch of rain in total with all 3 of these storms. Like I said, it's a more northerly system. Up in northern parts of California, that's where you're going to be getting 2 to 3 inches of rain. So I'll have to keep my eye on if we get any flood warnings throughout those areas. When it comes to the snowfall, 1, 2, 3, the same little 3 blasts with those 3 systems moving through. In total, by this time next week, we could be seeing maybe 2 to 3 feet of snow in the Sierras. So another good weekend if you're going up to Tahoe. Now, like I said, it's more of a northerly storm. So the place we really should be focusing is Washington and Oregon. And that's actually where the winter storm warnings are in effect right now. Keep your eye on the Cascades here because something interesting is going on. Even though it's multiple systems, these areas appear to just stay in snow the entire time. So even though the system is now moved off into Idaho and Montana, Cascades still getting snow until the next system moves through. And then they finally get in the clear before the next one moves through on Monday. It looks like that one on Monday could be the biggest storm. So we'll have to keep our eye on that as the coast gets some heavy rain as well. Let's just take a look at how much snow they could be picking up in total. With them, it's not as identified of a 3 different pulses because the Cascades are staying in snow this entire time, but by about this time, let's go to this time next week. So around here, looks like the Cascades could be getting 2 to 3 feet of snow. Places in Iowa, up to 2 feet of snow. Montana, 6 to 8 inches. And you can see widespread snow throughout the entire region. Most places picking up at least an inch or 2 within the next week. But the big story there is what's going on in Washington and Oregon. And it's not just going to be in the mountains. Because of that cold air that we also have up here, that's going to allow some of this snow to even fall in some of your cities like Portland and in the lower elevations. So with the impacts, since it is impacting some of our more higher populated areas, not sure if that's correct grammar there, but you can see this is a major winter storm coming through. And it seems like it's just one giant storm for Washington and Oregon because it just continually is in snow the entire time. You can see some areas expecting major to extreme impacts. And you can see what I'm talking about here about the snow building into some of our cities and lower elevations. Portland is part of that area covered by the major impact. So this is certainly a story we're going to have to keep our eye on, as it looks like there's going to be some major to possibly even some extreme impacts with the 2 to 3 feet of snow that'll be building in over the next week. As you can see, winter storm warnings are in effect, so as always, don't take my word for it when it comes to the weather. Always stay updated with your local resources, which will give you more fine-tuned forecasts for any safety measures you need to take. Now, the other thing that's going on throughout this general region in the Northwest is that Arctic blast of cold air. And you can see it's not just for the Northwest, it's working into the Midwest and even now the Northeast as well. That's something we've been talking about all week long, and it looks like we're going to be talking about for another week as well. It was supposed to be gone Wednesday, but with those 4 storms that are moving through, it's going to continue to pull this cold air down. You can see getting into this weekend, there's almost a strengthening and a broadening of this Arctic blast of cold air as places in the Midwest 30 to 40 degrees below average, and then that starts working all the way down into Texas as we get into Sunday. Places 50 degrees below average with straight up temperatures being below zero. I'll show you the temperatures themselves in a second. And then just to click through here, you can see that sitting over the middle of the country all the way into Tuesday, into Wednesday, even into this time next week. We're still 30 to maybe 35 degrees below average through Texas and Oklahoma. Now, the system driving all that, there's 2 things going on here. One, we have that low pressure system up in Canada. Winds are spinning counterclockwise, so on the bottom of it, it's pulling this air from west or northwest to southeast right into where we're seeing those cold temperatures. The other factor is the number of troughs, like the one you see right here, that are moving across the country. With a low pressure, winds flow from high to low, so as those move across, they continue to pull that cold air down. System after system doing the exact same thing, with systems number 3 and 4 looking like they're the ones that are digging all the way down, almost even into Mexico, and that's why that cold air is getting pulled all the way down into Texas, where we have 30 to 50 degree below average temperatures, even getting below zero in some of our major cities in Texas. And that looks to be the pattern that's going to continue for the entire next week. So I know we've been talking about the Arctic blast for a week, and especially if you live in these regions, you're probably sick of it, but this map shows the overall average of what we're going to be getting over the next 2 weeks. You can see that bullseye where we're predicted to be 30 to 40 degrees below average over the next 2 weeks. This whole area is about 20 to 30, then 10 to 20, and overall, except for Florida, it seems like the entire country is getting those below average temperatures, but especially that region right in the middle. So with that, like I said, I forgot to show the temperatures themselves. So let's go in here and actually look at some of the temperatures we're going to be getting. And we're getting right now. You can see negative 24 in Great Falls, negative 4 and negative 13 throughout parts of Minnesota. And that's not going anywhere. It seems like it's actually just going to be getting a bit worse. We're remaining in the negative 20s for Montana as we get into this weekend, below zero throughout much of the northern states. And as we push later into the week, that's when those other systems start digging all the way down into Texas. That's when these below zero temperatures start finding their way all the way into Texas. I think there's a couple points here where you can see negative 1 degrees in Texas, Green Bay negative 19 degrees on Monday, St. Paul negative 19 as well, North Platte negative 26, Kansas City negative 2. So this cold air is here to stay. It looks like still around next Tuesday, Wednesday, and I believe at this point it stops showing the exact numbers, but you can still tell by where that purple air is getting all the way into this time next week. We still have some areas throughout the Midwest that are below zero. So again, that's the average picture of what's going on. 30 to 50 degree below average temperatures with that Arctic blast of cold air, which is causing this wind chill warning. So I know I just showed you minus 20, minus 30, but when you mix it with winds, that's where it might actually feel like it's minus 40, minus 50. So that can cause frostbite in about 10 minutes. So this is something that we certainly, even though I keep talking about it and you might be tired of it, we're going to have to keep talking about it because this is a big part of the story and the impacts, as you can see, are widespread. Now, you've probably been seeing this every single time I show this warnings map, but it's the ice storm and winter storm warnings stretching all the way down from Texas to West Virginia and Virginia. So it's about time to actually dive into these 4 possible ice storms that we could be getting. Now, I say 4 possible because the first one is guaranteed to happen because, as you can see, it already is happening. The second one is set to happen around Saturday into Sunday. So I would say that's still pretty probable that that one's going to happen, and the location is relatively confident in the forecast models. That's ice storm number 2 right there, working in Saturday and Sunday. Now, where we get a little bit farther in the forecast, I have my rule of thumb. I don't trust a weather forecast more than 3 days out, but it's worth noting because this is certainly a big part of the story and just goes along with the overall theme of multiple systems working through over the next week. So this is now getting into Sunday, and you're going to see this one dip even farther down into Texas, Louisiana, bringing some ice all the way down into Texas. And what's happening here that you have to keep in mind is this is bringing in moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, which is going to fuel the storm as later in its lifetime. It's also bringing down cold air, which is why we're getting snow all the way down into Texas with that. So that is storm number 3, and that actually looks like it's going to be the biggest of the 3 as of right now. Again, this is next Tuesday, so the forecast models are a little shaky as to the exact timing or where this is going to happen or how big it's going to be. For example, maybe it doesn't dig all the way down into Texas and strengthen down here. Maybe it just moves across the middle and it's a weak storm. That's why I do these daily forecast videos every single day, because you always have to stay updated. You can't just look at it at the beginning of the week and then expect by Friday it's going to be the same story. So that's number 3. You can see, like I said, that one has a strengthening process there down in the Gulf of Mexico, which is going to sustain itself as it moves all the way up into the northeast, where that looks like it could be the biggest of the 3 storms. And then finally, now this is getting way off into the forecast, this time next week is when that storm number 4 looks like it could be coming in, and that looks like it's going to be more of Midwest first, and then moving into the northeast afterwards. And that looks like it could be a strong storm as well, because it's doing that same dip all the way down to get moisture into the Gulf of Mexico and also bringing that cold air down. This will be able to show better what I was just trying to say. So with that first system, the one we're feeling right now, you can see it doesn't even look like a storm system anymore. It's basically flat. And that's why we're no longer getting that 1.5 feet of snow in West Virginia and Virginia. This storm did something similar to what this second one is going to do. The bottom of it breaks off and then just goes off into Mexico. So by the time that second storm gets up here, it's still worth noting because the impacts are going to be widespread. Some areas will have ice, and it really doesn't take all that much ice to make your roadways dangerous. So even though it on this map looks like that second system lost all its energy as it broke off and went into Mexico, we still are going to have to keep that second ice storm in mind. Now you can see the next one looks like it does the same thing again, but there's a key difference here. So watch this trough right here. The bottom breaks off, but you're going to see it stick around and then get absorbed into this third system, and that's why the third one looks like it could be such a strong storm. And then just a wide view of the fourth one, that's number 4. That is one of the biggest troughs we've seen in a while. So we'll have to keep a close view on if this happens, because when you have lines of constant pressure, your isobars this vertical, that means there's going to be some very extreme, I was going to say vorticity, but that is what we're showing right here. Basically storm energy. I know the word vorticity can be a little intimidating sometimes, but just think of it like I do. I just think of it as storm energy. And this perfectly explains what I was just trying to say. So there's our storm that's going through right now, where we're getting some snow in West Virginia. You can see where there is still some of that storm energy. There's number 2, but watch what happens as it breaks off and that energy is lost down into Mexico. Now, here is why I think number 3 could be the biggest of the 3 storms. Watch it right here. It's this trough right here. You're going to see it do the exact same thing as those first 2 storms. The energy of the system looks like it breaks off and goes down into Mexico, but something different happens with this one. That energy then looks like it gets pulled back north by this new, stronger system, and then all that energy gets wrapped up and combined and becomes that possibly major storm we could be seeing midweek next week. So that's why we're going to have to be keeping an eye on that one. And then won't spend too long on this because it's very far off in the forecast. But that 4th storm looks like it could even be the biggest of all 4. But I'm not going to spend too much time on that because that's all the way into next Thursday, Friday. I certainly don't trust the weather models that far out. But that, as of right now, looks like it's going to be a big one. Now, the reason for that is what I've been talking about. Let's actually just continue to click through. These first 2 systems are a little bit farther north, so they're only slightly... Actually, no. We'll go back. We will talk about the first 2 because that's what's guaranteed to happen. It technically is more important to spend time on the weather that is certain to happen and is likely... It's more informational when you spend time on the weather forecasts that are happening right now and in the next couple days, even though it might be more entertaining and interesting to go over just the big storm that might happen a week from now. So with the storms right now, looking at this map, we got those 2 ice storms that one is happening right now, and then the next one looks like it's going to be happening in the next couple of days. And the key thing to look at on this map is where you have the separation between your below freezing temperatures, where you have this blue, and your above freezing temperatures, where you have this green. Now, the reason for that is you'll notice this borderline moves back and forth between night and day. It moves up during the day. That's where you can get some rain, but then those freezing temperatures move back down during night, and that's where you can get some ice. So that's why you want to keep an eye on that border between your below freezing and above freezing, because that's where you can have rain fall and then freeze as those temperatures oscillate back and forth right along the freezing boundary, which is exactly what you're seeing right there. So that's what I think is the most important thing to think about with those first 2 systems. Where is that boundary? If you're on that boundary, you're going to want to stay updated with local resources who can tell you a lot better things about safety than I can. But now we're getting into the storm number 3, the one that looks like it could be a big one. And here's what I want to point out. So this is next Tuesday and Wednesday as a trough builds in right here. This is a perfect graphic that I'm looking for. So that's the big trough digging all the way down into Texas. You can see what I was trying to explain earlier. It actually pulls this cold air down. You can see the winds flowing into this trough. That's what's pulling these below freezing temperatures all the way down into Texas. But then on the right side, you can see you have winds pushing into the trough. And that's taking the moisture from the Gulf of Mexico and pushing it into this storm. So right there, if you only remember one graphic from this entire video, it should be this one. That cold air pulling the low pressure here, pulling the cold air down and also pulling the moisture in. It's along this line that you're going to get the most precipitation. So let's actually look at some of that precipitation that we should be getting. Right there, you see what happened this morning and then what's expected to happen throughout the day today. You can see heavy rain throughout the southeast and that ice continuing for parts of Kentucky, West Virginia, and Virginia. Throughout this afternoon, though, once it starts to warm up a little bit, that's where Virginia getting some snow, North Carolina, South Carolina getting some rain. And then that system is gone. Then we have system number 2 coming through, it looks like Saturday afternoon, Saturday night into Sunday morning. That's where the second system starts to drop what looks like significant ice over Virginia. And we'll take local looks at all these places. Just kind of taking the wide view right here. Let's just go back to the beginning. Let's take it step by step, actually. I think it makes more sense to do that. Just go first around Texas, Oklahoma, then we'll go Tennessee, Kentucky, then we'll go Virginia, North Carolina area, and then we'll go up into the Northeast. I think that's the best way to follow these storms so it doesn't get too confusing with everything that's going on. I know there's a lot going on, so it might be hard at times to keep track of where we are. So let's just look down here. We had the ice this morning. Like I said, there was a 75 car pileup in Texas, so my thoughts and prayers go out to everyone who was affected by that. And that's just an example of what this ice can do and why we do have to go over it and mention it. So that system's gone. And then keep your eye on this region. That's what we're watching right here. That's next system number 2, looks like it's going to, for the most part, miss Texas and Oklahoma. It looks like it forms down here off of Alabama and goes up there. Looks like this area missing out on system number 2, but I wouldn't get too comfortable because, remember, 3 is the one that digs all the way down into Mexico, bringing snow and ice all the way down into Texas. And then that one moves off, and then system number 4 next Wednesday, same story. Digs all the way down. That's where we get some snow in Texas, ice back in Arkansas. But again, that one's a ways off in the forecast, so we'll keep our eye on that one, but not spend too much time on it. So that was this morning. You can see large amounts of ice, especially throughout Arkansas. We were talking about that yesterday. And then heavy rain throughout the day today, especially in southern Texas. Seems to clear up a little bit, though, as we go through Friday. Now, that's because that system number 2 is to the east of us. We're in the clear in this area for that second system. Then number 3 comes through, and we're certainly not in the clear. That's the one that digs all the way down. Looks like we're getting maybe 0.2 inches of snow per hour throughout Texas. That'll be exciting if you're a fan of winter weather and you live in Texas. But the thing that's not exciting is that ice, because ice is where things can get dangerous, and it looks like that's going to be building into Texas early Monday morning. So you might want to keep that in mind for your Monday commute right there. Looks like Arkansas and Louisiana will be getting that ice as well. So keep an eye on those locations in addition to Texas. And then with that next one, looks like, again, more snow, ice, and rain. What else can you say? It seems to be the theme right there. Overall, I'd say Arkansas was getting the majority of the ice. Texas was getting the majority of the rain. So let's just take a look at the rain. I say the majority of the ice was in Arkansas, but you did see we had ice throughout many different regions. So always be sure to stay updated with where it's going to fall. So just clicking through these systems, let's see how much rain we could get by this time next week. Looks like widespread regions of eastern Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, getting into Alabama, getting 3 inches of rain. And then basically the whole area is in at least 1 to 2 inches of rain. So a number of systems working through. Now let's take a close look at Arkansas, because that's where I think the ice looked the most significant. When you get colors like that, that's where you could be picking up half an inch of ice as this storm moves through. Like I said, when is that gone? Looks like the last little bit is about 12 p.m. Thursday. And then we're in the clear with that second system being to the east of us. And then it looks like it shows up again 6 a.m. Saturday. That ice returns to Arkansas just briefly. And then with the next big system, 12 a.m. Monday, that's where the ice is a little bit thicker, maybe 0.1 to 1/4 of an inch of ice, and more widespread as well. And then it looks like we're getting some decent snow throughout the day Monday as well. We're going to have to keep our eye on that, as looks like there could be some decent snow building into Arkansas before we get that fourth system of more ice on Thursday. Lots going on there. It's hard to keep track sometimes. So again, wide view. let's switch now to the areas around Kentucky and Tennessee, where you can see they were picking up some ice this morning, some significant ice buildup in Tennessee, especially the western parts where we're below freezing. Now that one, for the most part, is gone out of this region as we get into this afternoon. And then system number 2 looks like it's mostly in Virginia. Again, looks like Kentucky and Tennessee missing out on system number 2 right there. Not missing out on number 3 though, as we get into that storm coming in possibly on Monday. That's where looks like Kentucky and Tennessee are back into the bullseye of that ice. And then that one's gone. Then number 4 comes through. And it looks like we'll have to keep a close eye on where that boundary is between those below freezing temperatures and those above freezing temperatures. Because right between there is where you're going to get that ice. Let's take a closer look at that, where we're going to be getting it. There's that next system. That's Saturday afternoon. Looks like that moves through somewhat through Kentucky and Tennessee. And then there's the one moving through early Monday morning. That's where we get widespread ice throughout Tennessee and Kentucky. And keep an eye on who's getting snow, who's getting ice, and who's getting rain. Where we have that colder Arctic blast of cold air, that's where we get the snow. Where we're warmer from the air being pulled in by the Gulf of Mexico, that's where we get the rain. Right in between that is where we get the ice. So again, on Tuesday, I can't spend too much time on each one because I could just keep this live stream going for about 5 hours going over each one of these in depth. I'm trying to find a sweet spot here for how long to spend on each thing because there's just so much going on. It seems like that's the theme of the forecast. Multiple systems, hard to keep track of them all, as that is now getting into Thursday and Friday. So let's just take a local look because sometimes that's easier when it comes to timing wise. Let's get into, looks like we're in the clear throughout Friday, so that's good. And then 6 a.m. Saturday is when that ice starts to show up again in Tennessee. And then throughout the day, Saturday. As we go through Sunday, mostly in the clear, and then storm returns on Monday. 6 a.m. Monday, widespread ice again throughout Tennessee and Kentucky. Snow in the colder places where we're still below freezing with that Arctic blast of cold air. And then again, on Tuesday, you can see the low itself, 0.2 to 0.5 inches of rain, possibly half an inch of ice buildup, and then snow where it's colder. So let's actually see where we're getting the snow. Let's click through all these systems right here till about this time next week. I think that's a good way to do it. It looks like, again, with that 4th system, the one that's still a little shaky in the forecast, we'll have to keep our eye on it because we might be getting a foot of snow there. But around here, that's where that borderline is, where you have to watch out. Right on that border is where we mostly get the ice. Up north, it's cold enough to get the snow. Looks like we're getting 2 to 4 inches, maybe some parts of Kentucky getting 2 to 6. And then right along that border is where you get the ice. So I know I keep saying that, but this is a better graphic to even explain what I'm showing. So watch the way this cold air goes up during the day and then back down during the night. And that just kind of makes sense because nighttime is colder than day. But what that does when you're getting precipitation is some rain can fall during the day as those temperatures are above freezing, noted by the green, where below freezing is with the blue. You get some rain in here, and then during night, that cold air moves back down and turns that rain into freezing rain or ice. And that seems to be right where we're getting that strip of ice, right where this cold below freezing air just continues to oscillate back and forth. So during the day, we get some rain, and then the cold air comes in at night and turns it into ice. I think that's a good graphic to show what's going on there. So let's continue to follow this system now as it moves into West Virginia and Virginia. And it looks like they're the bullseye of system number 2. So they're actually still feeling system number 1, still getting some snow throughout the day today, rain down in the Carolinas, and then even some ice along the Virginia-North Carolina border. That's going to move off. And then there's system number 2. We were missing it when we were talking about Texas and Kentucky here, but you can see that looks like it could have widespread impacts with that second ice storm. Now, where the forecast models get a little shakier, a little less confident, so don't take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. With number 3, That's the one that's the one that looks like it could be the big one, pulls in all that moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. Remember, that's the one that wrapped in that positive vorticity, that energy. And then that looks like it could be the storm to watch, especially through this region as we get into Tuesday. So that, I think, is the big thing I'm watching right there, with storm number 4 ways off in the forecast. So just going to take a quick look. Looks like that's more in the Midwest that we were just looking at. So clicking through here, see still getting some snow and rain throughout the day today. And then that system's gone. You can actually see it move off the coast right there. And then system number 2 moves in. So that's Saturday night into early Sunday morning. That's where this ice starts to build up right here in parts of Virginia, West Virginia, stretching all the way up into Pennsylvania as well. Again, quick mover. It's not like it's sitting over you for a number of days. That one's gone. But then the third one is going to be coming in sometime on Tuesday. I'll say is going to coming in. I'll change that to might be coming in, because this is now more than 3 days out in the forecast. We'll have to keep our eye on this one. But so far, that looks like it's going to be the biggest of the 3 if this does actually end up happening. That's where you could be building up half an inch of ice from North Carolina all the way up into Pennsylvania. So that's where road conditions can get quite dangerous. With that fourth one, looks like areas around West Virginia, Virginia, and North Carolina are mostly in rain with that fourth one. So we'll have to keep our eye on that to see if that ends up staying the same as well. So what's going on throughout the day? Today, 1 p.m. around right now, you can see we do still have some ice, but mostly rain and snow as we get into this afternoon and this evening. Snow for Virginia, rain for North Carolina. Then as we get into 1 a.m., you're probably not driving, so I probably don't need to spend too much time on that ice. But then as we get into Saturday night, that's when that second ice storm looks like it's going to be moving through. And I'd say this one has pretty good confidence in the models because it's only a few days off. That's where we're getting ice through Charlottesville, Harrisonburg, and then you're going to have to watch that throughout Saturday night. And then we're almost in the clear. That third system right there. So that's 7 a.m. Tuesday. That's the bullseye of system number 3 that I'm going to be watching very closely, and I'll be spending a large amount of time on in my Monday forecast, especially as the forecast models get closer for that storm right there. So let's just take a look at how much snow we're going to be building. Looks like, let's just start with what we're picking up right with the ones that we can be confident are going to happen. You can see 4 to 6 inches throughout West Virginia, 3 to 5 inches throughout Virginia. So you might be wondering, why is that so different from the forecast just a few days ago? And it really has to do with the overall pattern that you can see it right now. It doesn't even look like a trough. You wouldn't even know a storm was there if you just looked at this map. And it's because with that storm that was supposed to drop 1.5 feet of snow to West Virginia and Virginia, the same thing happened, which is happening to storm number 2 right here, where the bottom just breaks off, goes into Mexico, and the system loses a majority of its energy. So that's why that isn't showing 1.5 feet of snow right now. It's just 4 to 6 inches. We do still have impacts throughout the area and some warnings in effect, but certainly not what was originally forecasted. And it's because of what I was just saying, how the bottom just broke off the trough and completely lost all of its energy. Now, just for fun, let's click through to see what we might be getting with those other 2 systems. That's where we could get over 1 foot in West Virginia, but given the lessons we've learned this week, let's not place too much emphasis on that actually happening. So, once again, I just want to go back, show this. Storm system 1 moving through. With that second one, it's doing the same thing, losing all of its energy, breaking off. Now, a different thing happens with that third. And this is the important one to look at for this location, because this looks like it could be the biggest storm when it comes to this region that we're looking at right now. You might think it breaks off and does the exact same thing, loses all its energy, but it actually gets reabsorbed into that third system. You can see it much better on the vorticity map here, where you'll notice, okay, backing up, let's make sure we're at the beginning here. So there's that trough, the one that does lose the bottom of its system. That goes off, loses it, we lose it to Mexico. Then right here, that's the start of system number 3. And it looks like it's going to do the same thing. It looks like all that energy is being lost down into Mexico again. But keep your eye out for this. Think of this just as storm energy getting reabsorbed into that system number 3. So that's why that looks like it could be a big one for Virginia and West Virginia. It's not losing all of its energy. It's actually reabsorbing it and kind of reorganizing itself. And then with number 4, just for fun, let's just mention this one, because that looks like it could be, you can see that has way more energy than any of the other systems we're looking at. And that's because the isobars are dipping all the way down, almost straight vertical. And that's where we're pulling in lots of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, lots of cold Arctic air. That's the system we're going to have to watch, especially for the Midwest, towards this time next week. But we already looked at the Midwest. We're looking at this region right around here. Or I skipped something. Okay, so that's the total snow that we're going to get. I wanted to show that again just to get a big view. The reason for that is those systems that are going through. That third system's the one to watch because that's the one that's bringing in the most energy. Now that's also going to be a big factor when it comes to the Northeast, because it looks like the Northeast is feeling the effects of these systems as well. So you can see system number 2 moves in right there, and that looks like it will bring some ice and snow to the Northeast. So we're going to take a more local look at that. Then with system number 3, that looks like it will have possibly major impacts for the Northeast as well. So that's why I was showing that map where it reorganizes and moves through right here. Looks like the Northeast is going to be in that bullseye of ice and snow as well. But again, that's getting into next Tuesday. So let's actually take a more local look at what's going on. You see not much going on throughout the day Friday. And then we start to see that system number 2 build in, where we're getting ice in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, snow throughout New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. And then there's that low. It'll be interesting to watch if that sticks around on the coast. If it does, we'll be getting more snow throughout this area. If it just moves off, it'll just be a quick storm. Now here comes system number 3. This one set to possibly happen Tuesday morning. Again, forecast model's a little unconfident here, but that's the one we're going to have to watch, because that's where we could be getting 0.2 to 0.5 inches of snow in New York and maybe a half an inch of ice buildup throughout Pennsylvania, New Jersey, maybe even working all the way up through Vermont and New Hampshire at some points, as that low right now is moving right along the coast. That's the key thing you want to look at when forecasting for a nor'easter, because when it's right along the coast, you think about the rotation around the low. It's counterclockwise. So on the right side, it's pushing all this moisture in. On the left side, it's pulling all this cold air down. That is where you get these heavy snowfall rates that you see could be a possibility on Tuesday. And then just for fun, let's look at storm number 4. That's a ways off in the forecast. I guarantee this map will change, but as of right now, that looks like it could be a major ice storm for Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and then Maine. So that's a big one we're going to have to keep our eye on. Now, just more local look. You can see, when was that snow gone? About 7 a.m. Thursday. So that system's already gone for you guys. Nothing until about 1 a.m. Sunday. That's when some snow returns to New York and New Jersey. And then that ice builds in 7 a.m. Sunday. So that's when you might want to watch out when you're driving. And then, again, it's a quick mover. That's the case for that next system. That's the one, 1 p.m. on Tuesday, that we're going to have to watch. That's where heavy snowfall possibility and large amount of ice accumulation possibility, as that low moves right along the coast, pushing in the moisture, pulling down the cold air. And then just continuing to click through, that's now getting all the way into Friday. As you can see, that could be a major storm as well, which is why which is why we do these forecast videos every single morning. Guarantee things will change, so we're going to have to keep our eye on that. Just a wide view of who's getting snow overall. This is by Monday. Widespread areas getting 2 to 4 inches of snow. Places in Vermont, New Hampshire, maybe just 1 to 2. And then if that big system does come through on Tuesday, looks like there's widespread regions in Pennsylvania, New York, Massachusetts that are going to be getting a foot of snow. So that is the key storm we're going to have to watch Tuesday. Keep that in mind if you live in the Northeast. I'll be forecasting on that over the next few days. So overall, you can see where we have some impacts with that ice storm. A good point that somebody actually mentioned in my comments, because yesterday I was saying, well, the impacts are just listed as minor and moderate, so it'd be kind of weird to call it a major ice storm. But a good point he made is when you're all the way down here in Memphis, you're not really used to having big ice storms. So even though you're getting minor impacts from this ice storm, it's actually a major ice storm for you because it's certainly out of the ordinary. So that's a good thing to keep in mind, is how unusual an event is. And it is unusual for this ice to be building all the way down into Texas and Arkansas and Tennessee. And the reason for that really just comes back to that cold blast of Arctic air, which is causing all those wind chill warnings throughout all of these states. But even though these states don't have the wind chill warnings, they still have that cold Arctic air, and that's what's allowing these ice storms to happen all the way from Texas up into West Virginia and Virginia. You see that large stretch. And again, that's a perfect visualization of right along that border of where moisture is being pulled in, cold air is being pulled down, and then that below freezing and above freezing temperatures are bouncing back and forth so rain can fall and then turn into ice when the cold comes back down again during the nighttime hours. So, like I said, the system right now, guaranteed to happen because it's already happening. System number 2, so there's system number 1, guaranteed to happen, it already happened. System number 2, I'd say is likely to happen because that's getting into Saturday and Sunday. That's not that far off in the forecast. System number 3 looks like it could be even bigger than the first 2, but this is where the models start to lose some confidence as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday. Going to have to keep our eye on that, as well as system number 4, which looks like it could be equally, if not even bigger than number 3. So lots going on in the weather forecast. I tried my best to organize all of this today. It might have been all over the place, but that's just because the weather itself is all over the place. So think of my scattered forecast today as a metaphor for what is going on throughout the country. Multiple storm systems, Arctic blast of cold air, winter storm advisories, ice storm warnings, wind chill warnings, all kinds of stuff going on. So lots to talk about as we move forward. If you want to stay updated, you can subscribe to Holt Hanley Weather, and thanks for watching.